Thank you. What an inspiring session. Thank you to the organizers. Okay, well, so this talk is also about forestry. So the last talk, Joe and I have both been funded through the CAL FIRE LA Moran Reforestation Center to bring in some climate adaptive perspective to reforestation efforts. And so this tool is kind of spinning off from the last one, and it's essentially building triage maps to help to identify, to approach that question from the risk perspective rather than the benefit perspective. So, you know, we're here in this meeting, we've been talking about annual all the way over to long-lived species. And where does population genetics kind of fall within the different types of restoration or reforestation. For this particular application, it has to do with going to collect the seed to put into the inventories. So imagine there's these big freezers with hundreds of bags of conifer seed, because those can be stored for a long time, unlike some other tree species. And but we need to get more, and where are we going to get them from? And there's a limited number of people driving around in their pickup trucks to go get it. So this tool is trying to focus on that question. The reforestation cycle. This is a nice little graphic that the CAL FIRE LAMRC put together. It starts with cone scouting, and that's where the tool that I'm talking about is representing. And then Joe's tool, the CAST tool, is down here under seedling selection and orders, perhaps maybe some other locations. And PostScript is one that's up around the planting end of the reforestation cycle. So there's different tools that would come into different places. I guess the Seeds for Change would also be perhaps in the scouting or in the seedling and seed order phase. Well, why triage? And then developing the range maps, looking at the environmental risks, and then the operational priorities. So how do we integrate practice with risk, and then our rankings and a website demo if there's time. So nighttime temperatures have been going up. Here's a 10-year rolling mean up through 2024 for all of California. Precip has been bouncing around, but climatic water deficit as a metric of stress, plant water stress, has been increasing. We've known about retreating edges since about 2005, when we digitized the Wieselander data set and found that there was an upslope retraction of about 100 meters in the lower edge of Ponderosa Pine across a 300-kilometer front on the western slope of the Sierra Nevada. And so because we want to send people to places that have trees, I don't want a statistical likelihood model of where might we find trees. I want an evidence-based records of here are actual trees, there's a record of them. And so what we started with is the Tree Atlas from 1972, which compiled earlier biogeographic surveys, the Griffin and Critchfield. And we've incorporated about 50 years of additional surveys and point data and plot data to that on a tree species by tree species basis. And we've done this for 5 species. We're building it for about 20 to 30 more at the current time. And so I can tell you, I was quoting 64,000, my memory is terrible. I can tell you that for Ponderosa Pine, it occupies 62,457 square kilometers of California, and I'm pretty confident about that number, right? You know, so it's an open source thing. We can add more if you have other location records, but I'm pretty confident that that's a solid number. And once you have that, you can use it to assess fragmentation, what percentage got burned down in a particular fire for a wide range of applications. So there's the other species, sugar pine, white fir, red fir, and Doug fir that we currently have. So then we can take that map and we can intersect it with the seed zones of California. These are the forestry zones, right? And then the 500-foot elevation bands. So those two combined, there's about 1,200 or so of those in California. And we're going to use that to as effectively our accounting system in this process. So we developed a place-based climate risk assessment that uses the range of something and looks at the frequency of climates within it and sets what are the non-stressful and the unusual or infrequently encountered climates in a baseline time period, and then says what happens to every grid cell within it. Most of our conversations in this meeting have had to do with within range movements. We haven't really talked too much about planting things beyond the range of species. And this is in response to that from resource managers who said, look, I don't care if my species is moving to Canada. I'm not, unfortunately. And so please give me something that shows a variation of risk across my location. So we applied that first to vegetation. Now we're doing it to individual tree species ranges. This is for Ponderosa pine. And we can take the areas that are in high stress, and then we can transpose that in high stress, climatic stress, by what time in the future. And so this map is the same range map, but now it's colored by at what time in the future do different parts of the range enter into high stress. The blue is areas that don't reach that uncommon condition by 2100, but the other colors are either it is already or by 2040 or 70 or 2090. And that can be useful if you look at the seed zone and elevation bands in terms of the red and above colors are the areas that are moving into stress and how many of those seed zones are found at different elevations in the Sierra and in California. So we have that now, right? And we burn that into the range of Ponderosa in every, I'm going to call them SEBs, seed zone elevation band, in every SEB. We can also calculate for that same range which parts of it have burned more frequently or haven't burned in 100 years, and that could be translated into the risk of a high intensity wildfire. And so that's what I'm showing now here, is that we can build this map of what SEBs have different levels of high intensity wildfire risk. So we've got a climate risk now, and we have a high wildfire intensity, and we can combine those. So we can just add them together and say, well, which areas are now showing a really high risk profile across the entire range of the state. And a lot of the areas in the southern part of the state, not surprisingly, have that condition. And so yeah, there you see it. And then we were talking with the folks at the tree nursery, and they're like, well, we have our own priorities of where we go, and they're based on three things. They're based on where are we getting a lot of orders from? So we're getting requested to grow 50,000 starts for this location, for that location. Well, where are those? And the second is, well, how much seed do we think we need to be able to reforest? And their goal is 25% of each SEB. So that would be, if they had that much, they would feel good, and they're nowhere near that. They're nowhere near it. And then the third one is, well, what's actually in the inventory? So that inventory over the last 5 years, we took the stock cardboard cards, scanned them, had undergrads digitize it on their own laptops during COVID, and now they actually have a functional inventory that is being used. And we can combine all three of those. So we can, for every seed zone and elevation band, we can say, well, is it high priority from an order standpoint? How much do you need? How much do you have? And so we can, when we combine those, this is the operational priorities across the range of this species now for Ponderosa pine. And because all of this is in essentially a database, we can allow the manager, the person who's trying to pick which seeds they might use, to say, well, okay, look, I don't really care about climate change, Jim, but I do care a lot about wildfire, and I want that, and I want my inventory list. And so you could recombine this and prioritize it for those two things, or potentially because it could have a genetic value, or it could have a growth value, or other things in there as well. but we've tried to design it in a way that other data could be incorporated easily into this. And then so in the paper that we just published, actually just this month, just January, I guess, we found that there was a very poor match between the risk profile across the range, the operational areas, and then you could combine them, and you could say, well, okay, given all of those things, what are the highest priority areas to send people out to go look for cone crops? Because the other thing is the cone crops, you have to identify, 5 minutes, you have to identify stands that have a good crop early in the season, then you have to go back and keep monitoring until it's time to send somebody up there to cut them down and bring them down. And so that's a limiting factor in where we're going to get seed to bring into this system. Well, and that's where the next phase of this comes in. So the intent is to help the manager who's contracting the people with the pickup trucks on where to go. And we don't just have to stop with saying it's certain seed zone and elevation bands. We can then throw that into a GIS and we can say, okay, let's bring in the roads. And let's bring in, so here I've screened out the areas that are not the highest priority. We'll bring in aerial imagery to see if there's still a stand there in the location that we have a high-risk profile or we have a priority. And do we have road access, a dirt road, or can you get in there, right? And so those are all additional steps. And that's what we've effectively built into this little website that I maybe have time to take a quick look at. But basically, it's so it basically has all of the data that I was just talking about. Can I click on this? I don't know that I can. Let's see. I don't know if I can click on the website or not. And then on this website, you can pull down from Ponderosa and you can select the range or the climate risk or the fire risk or the combined or any of the operational priorities, and it'll light up that map. And then if you go over here and click on it, it will also API over to Joe's tool so that you can look and see what the cast values are for that. And it will also API to a CAL FIRE tool that is their own internal way that the State Department is using to track their inventory and other categories that they have. And so making this so that it can go between different data sources is another piece of operationalizing the early end of everything that we've been talking about in this meeting, which is a lot more about, well, it's not only about, but a lot more about, well, what are the benefits and where are we going to plant and what are we going to plant, what kind of mix or not mix. So I'll leave it there.